Everyone is vulnerable to being pinned when life plays hardball, whether it is a physical or mental health condition. No one can stand alone.
No.
For those who are not pinned, appreciate that it could be you or loved one someday. So when you see a chance to help someone, please do. They are not weak, they are pinned. Even a slight hand up and a listening ear can begin seriously lightening the load, change, or save a life. Help end stigma. Move from being pinned to purpose. Time for a hand up.
Hello, everyone. It's Jeff Moore. I'm the founder of the Pin to Purpose podcast. And it's a great pleasure for me today to welcome Glenn Morardi, the founder of 7 Cups. And so we're going to have a great discussion today about his journey and his organization as well. Before I start, I'd just like to say for viewers, in particular ones who've never seen the podcast, that Pin to Purpose was founded to try to help shatter stigma and give people a hand up on their healing journeys while having conversations about mental health and well-being. So, Glenn, I understand that 7 Cups is the largest mental health community in the world. And I understand, too, that you've been able to reach, I think, over 1.8 billion, through people, through chats and through all sorts of communications. There's incredible reach and impact with the people that you've trained and that are available for people. But why don't I pass it over to you, really, to do it justice in terms of a bit of an introduction to yourself and also and 7 Cups, and then we'll continue on a broader discussion.
All right, sounds great. Well, thanks, Jeff, again for having me on, and congrats on all the success with Pin to Purpose. I think it's a great initiative, and happy that our two organizations and our experiences are connecting here and crossing. I wish we reached 1.8 billion people. We've reached about 80 million people, but we've had billions of messages. So probably that's the stat you're thinking of. But hopefully one day, I can come back here in 30 years. And say,
no,
hey,
that's still, it's incredible. And I'm sorry, I got the wrong stat there, but it is still absolutely incredible.
We can be hopeful, right? We can hope. But yeah, 7 Cups is a free emotional support service. We are the world's largest mental health community. The quick background on it is, I'm a wounded healer. So my parents tried, but they struggled. And so there were some folks that looked out for me along the way. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. And so I'm just very, very thankful for their efforts. And so I went on to become a psychologist and an entrepreneur. And my first company was a learning company. So when I was a kid, and I think when you were a kid, learning was offline, then it moved online. Dating was offline. You had to actually talk to people, then it moved online. And so I was thinking about what is the behavior that's offline that hasn't yet moved online. And my wife, who you met, is a therapist, and she was listening to me. And it occurred to me the need to talk to somebody is the behavior that is offline that hadn't yet moved online. And so then we started 7 Cups way back when in 2013. And really, it's just the need to talk to somebody. So to be able to share what's on your heart, what's bothering you, to have somebody care for you, very simple. We call it active listening, but it's basically just like being a good listener, paraphrasing, summarizing, empathizing, trying to see the world. If you imagine yourself as that person, what would you be thinking and feeling? And then just sharing that with them. And just a very simple way. And that is very, very therapeutic. It's kind of rare, but it's something that really helps people feel heard.
That's amazing. I'd like to go back a little bit at the beginning of our conversation to your own journey. And if there's, a bit more things that you'd be happy to share in terms of, different challenges. And you were talking about the different people around you in your community that made such a difference for you. And if there's some other things that you'd like to share.
Sure. Yeah. For me, I've experienced some trauma in my life, some challenges, some ups and downs, and there were safe havens, that I came across. Either, there was a Catholic church up the street from me, which was a really good safe haven. We had a really good priest. And then there were other mentors and leaders that I came across along the way that just kind of looked out for me, professors or coaches, people that, just saw me, and they kind of gave me hope. They could see something in me that I couldn't see in myself. And then, I did a lot of therapy, in college. I had an excellent therapist who just, reparented me in some ways, and just helped me really see things. And so that and then I'm nearly 50 now. So there's been like loads of challenges throughout my life, as well, that I can kind of go into or not go into, but I've been pinned many times.
Right.
And I've had some people come by and say, "Hey, let me help you up, lift that bar up." And that's basically why we do 7 Cups. I mean, I think, I know what it feels like to be alone and to experience that, that kind of anguish, that kind of liquid pain, if you will, And so when you feel that and that, you don't want anybody else to go through that.
Yes.
That's
right.
really the heart of 7 Cups.
Right. Right. And if you go back in time to your youth or during these times, how do you see the way society was looking at these issues compared to how we've evolved to at this point?
Oh my God. I didn't have any language for it. I mean, it was just survival mode. There was no, when I was a kid, I wasn't even aware of mental health. I mean, I wasn't aware of a lot of things. I was just trying to keep going, and keep my family together as much as I could. So I didn't really have language for it, to be honest. It was more of just like, I'm really anxious. I'm really worried. I'm really fearful, and I'm just trying to get through it. But I didn't actually have good language for it. That took me a while to get that language. And now I think we have so much more language for it. Some of that language is helpful. Some of the language is not so helpful. So I think getting the right language, I think, is helpful. Getting the right maps, the right models, so that people can navigate their way through, I think, is really important. But I think there's just so much more language. I mean, your organization, the metaphors, I think all of these things we're a lot more aware now than we were. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about you were touching on your professional work before starting 7 Cups and how it relates obviously to mental health and helping others, et cetera. But can you also share a bit more about some of the stories or work that you were doing prior to 7 Cups?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the kind of the main focus that's most relevant is being an entrepreneur. And so, somebody said that having a startup is, and this too, it's like being punched in the face repeatedly. And every once in a while, somebody else throws a cookie at you, and you just gotta look for the cookies. It's like, that's it. And so, you've not heard that before?
No, not exactly. And I'm laughing in part because I think my wife thinks I should eat a lot less cookies. So I'm still on an entrepreneurial journey, but maybe I'm somehow getting too many cookies. So,
Right. Yeah, well, I think you gotta look for the upsides. You gotta look for the benefits. And so running a startup, a technology startup, there's just loads of challenges. And I think one of the really good benefits of it is you're wrong so much. Like there's like in a normal life, you kind of have your job and you do your, it's like your first couple of years. Like my daughter's in the process of becoming a nurse. So she's like learning a lot of new things. But like in 3 years, if she doesn't change her direction, she'll probably have it mostly sorted. But I think entrepreneurial stuff, there's so much novelty. There's just like constant novelty, and you have to use your mind. You have to have a predictive engine or an analytics engine that's in your mind that says, okay, well, this is what I think is going to happen, and then I'm going to make a bet. There's a really good book, Thinking in Bets, but like you're you're making a bet on it, and then the data comes in and it tells you if your bet is right or not. And so if you've had the good fortune of being a startup person, you know how many bets you've made and you know how wrong you've been. And so that's kind of like the nice benefit of it. Is a lot of humble pie, a lot of,
Right.
okay, here I am wrong again, processes.
And tell us a bit about, so the early days when you first launched, 7 Cups, and some of the different twists and turns, or how you got really excited early in terms of your ability to reach people and help them with their mental health.
Yeah, that was super fun. So that was in 2013. We applied to something called Y Combinator, which is a startup
Yep.
accelerator in California.
Absolutely.
I hadn't, I read Hacker News a lot, which is their kind of news stream. And they had an application you could apply. And I just, asked my wife, I was like, hey, listen, because we have 4 kids. I had a 1-year-old. And I was like, look, what do you think about this? Is this just insane or what? And she was like, go for it. And I was like, all right. So I did. And I stayed up late. You had to do like a minute video. And it was finally late. It was like the deadline. I recorded it. My eyes were closing, but I saw it got like 27 views, and then it just fell. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. Didn't make it. That was a good fantasy. And then what happened was I was reading Hacker News, and they said, hey, application announcements have gone out. If you got invited to come, check your email. So I checked my email, and it was like, yeah, you're invited to come to just a 10-minute presentation. And so I told my wife, I said, we got an interview. I got an interview.
That's great. Yeah.
Can you believe this? And so anyways, ended up moving out to California for 3 months. They came out for a month. My family came out for a month in the middle. But I was the first listener. My wife was the second. I was getting listeners all up and down the coast of California, all like grad students, people at NAMI. And then this English guy who was a peer supporter at Santa Clara NAMI said, why not? Because the wait times would be could get up to 15 minutes, which I know for regular, normal mental health system is not a long time. But we try to get people as help as quickly as we can. And so he said, why don't you put a little banner over the chat that says, one of the best ways to help yourself is to help somebody else. And so from that point forward, some percent of the people that got help would become listeners. And then we started being able to get that. And then that happened because we were the first free mental health service. We got covered by newspapers all around the world, back when newspapers were a thing. And
I remember that.
Remember that? Remember getting the newspaper?
I used to sit down with a box of cookies and read my newspaper.
Those were the good old days. But yeah, so then we got covered everywhere, and then we got this whole big international volunteer workforce, just kind of, by good fortune.
Can you talk a bit more about listeners? And explain, how the concept for 7 Cups and how you work to train them, and et cetera.
Yeah, listening is, so the key part that makes therapy work is something called the therapeutic alliance, which if I'm your therapist, and this is the same coaches, teachers, mentors, people, if you're in a relationship, you can have a therapeutic alliance. And that basically just means I like you. You feel when somebody likes you, and you feel when they don't like you, right? So it's a very intuitive. So it's I like you, it. And then I'm putting my arm around your shoulder, and we're looking at your problems out here, and we're just talking about them. And I'm just listening to you. And so that is basically the core part of that makes therapy work. If you are fantastic at cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy, whatever therapeutic orientation you want to talk about, but you don't have a good therapeutic alliance, it is not going to work. It will only work if you have a good therapeutic alliance. And so we want folks to be able to have really good therapeutic alliance where the person they're talking to feels cared for, they feel listened to. And how we do that is people go through an initial training program. It takes about an hour. They have to pass a test. Then we put them in front of a chat bot that acts like a student that's depressed. They help that student feel better. Then they make an oath to treat people with dignity and respect. And then they get involved in our continuing education program. So we have like a whole academy, and there's 4 or 5 different programs, all free, 70 courses, all free. But as you're moving through, like if I'm chatting with you, you might heart one of my messages. If you heart that message, basically saying like, hey, you get me, I get a point for that. If you
Okay, great.
if you leave me reviews, I get points for that. If I complete courses, I get points for that. And then the last thing we have is AI support. So if I'm chatting with you and I'm stuck, which happens, I can press a button and the AI will generate a response for me. I can't copy and paste it, but I can be inspired by it and then use that to help do a better job of listening to you.
And this has become truly global. I mean, I was so amazed and I thought it was fantastic. Congratulations to you, Glenn, and your colleagues in your organization, because you've become truly global. And so, just some statistics. I mean, how many countries are you in? You're really everywhere almost.
Yeah, it's 600,000 trained volunteer listeners in 189 countries that provide support in 140 languages.
Incredible, just incredible. 140 languages too. I didn't even think about that, and that's a huge thing, obviously, because that could be a huge barrier for somebody, But that's amazing. So when you started in 2013, if somebody said to you 189 countries, 140 languages, would you have said, oof, that would be even, a fraction of that? It would have been, of course, a huge success, but how do you feel about that? I mean, the challenge is, I guess it's an endless and very, very needed service. So, but it's still really a huge accomplishment, what you've put out there.
Yeah, I feel good about it. I mean, we've always had really, really high hopes. I mean, we hope to hit your billions numbers, right? And but before this is all said and done. But yeah, like you said, the need is huge. The demand and the need is huge. And so I just want us to help as many people as we can and do as good of a job as we possibly can with all those folks, have a sort of real digital social safety net for the globe, so that like we're catching as many people as we can, and then put a hand up to get a hand up, everybody's lifting each other up. So we've made a ton of progress, but there's miles and miles and miles to go.
One of the things we share in common also is that we are both ambassadors with the Real Mental Health Foundation. So whenever I have an ambassador or I've had an ally on, I'd like to have more, I always give a shout out to Sean Lesser and his team, the whole team there, and then our fellow ambassadors and allies. But wondered if you have any comments also on, what Sean is leading the charge in building, which connects to the efforts of and the organizations of founders such as yourself and others that are doing great things in the mental health space.
Yeah, I think Sean's doing a great job with that. The thing I most appreciate about Sean is that it's very real, right? Like the name of it. Yep. And like sometimes people talk about mental health and it's like, like they kind of like hedge and they're like a little bit concerned about talking about it. And the way he describes it's really like, look, I broke my ankle. Like there's just nothing, I was hospitalized. It's just not a big deal. Like this is just the way it is. We all have challenges. We all deal with our issues, and we have to lean on one another to grow stronger and overcome them. And so I think his spirit in that is great. And I think really needed.
And let's talk about stigma for a moment, because at the core of Pin to Purpose is this simple metaphor. Anybody who's able-bodied and can lift just a 45-pound bar once will have the exact same result every single time, anytime, every time around the world. with this exercise, and they will do it until they can't lift it off their chest anymore, and that they've hit a breaking point, just as everybody is vulnerable, depending on what happens to them, to hitting a breaking point. So we try to say people are not weak, but they're in a weakened state, depending on what's happening in their lives. But stigma is still a roadblock, and stigma is a problem. And you're working in 189 countries, so there's so many factors with different cultures, different histories, different views. But I just want to throw it out there for a minute to talk a bit about stigma and how you feel about it, and if you're encouraged that, again, as maybe we said a bit earlier, when you were growing up or younger and having challenges, it was hard to know even any of the terms, and maybe rarely spoken about. When I ended up hospitalized, 14 years ago now, eventually I came to feel like Sean does, and express it the way Sean does, in terms of, look, it can happen to anyone. But let's just talk about stigma, or if I can pass it back to you to have any comments on stigma and how we continue to help to eliminate it.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I love your pin to purpose, example, because an illustration, because it is so good. We are all in weakened states throughout our life, and we need each other for help. That was part of it with 7 Cups, is like being a psychologist by training. It's kind of awful to people to sign up for therapy. Like there's a lot of steps involved, and some of those steps are very difficult. And the more shame you have, the harder those steps are. And so for us, as we were talking about earlier, our name used to be 7 Cups of Tea. And the idea was that, look, you're not getting a diagnosis, you're not getting a treatment plan, you don't have to sit face to face with somebody to get help and give your whole life history. Instead, it's 7 cups of tea. You're just having a cup of tea with a friend, and you're just chatting about it. And every cup of tea brings another level of healing. The name is from a poem called 7 Cups of Tea. And if we just care for each other, if we move away from, look, you've got to have this heavy diagnosis and it just means X, Y, and Z, and now you have this label and that's the label you are. And instead we just move towards like your kind of language, right? Look, some of us are in a difficult state from time to time, and we need people to care for us. And almost everybody can identify, like, I often struggle with, like, what's the best way to get the message across? And like pin to purpose is the way you do it, and active listening is one way that 7 Cups does it. But it's kind of like, who's had your back? Almost everybody has had somebody who's got their back sometime in life. And then it's like, once you know that somebody got my back, then you want to get somebody else's back.
Yeah. Amazing. And I think that's the key, whatever reference point somebody has, then, you have something, like what you're doing, what I'm doing, what so many people at The Real are doing, but then in broader society, it doesn't matter what the reference point is. It's just to have one, and just to know that you're not alone, and just to know that, there are better days ahead. And so that's what these conversations hopefully give some of those reference points, and give, new places to look, and new supportive communities. And on those lines, can you share a little bit more? And, I'll put the link to the 7 Cups website for anybody who'd like to go and learn more after the podcast. But so if somebody listening, for example, has never connected with 7 Cups and did want to speak to, one of the listeners, for example, how do they actually do that?
So there's 2 ways. They just create an account, and then you can either do a general request, which is where the request goes out to all of the current available listeners. And then you put in like three words, like, I'm struggling with anxiety, I'm struggling with sleep challenges, or whatever else. And you can include like a little sentence down. And so that gives the listeners who see that request, because they see a queue of all of the current people seeking help and the things they need help with, right? And you can put your language in too. And so then I can say, okay, this is, you wouldn't use Jeff, but let's say it's pinned, right? Because we assign you an anonymous username.
Sure.
And so we assign you an anonymous username, and then I can just pick you up, or any of the listeners can pick you up. Alternatively, you can go to browse listeners and you can choose, okay, this is my topic, this is my language, this is my country, this is my religion if you want. So there's like 7 different variables. You can just choose one, or you can use a combination of all 7. And then you get a subset of listeners that you feel like you really identify with. So like, for example, if I'm, like an international student and I want to talk to somebody from my home country in my home language who understands depression, then I can do that. I can run that search and connect with that person.
And is there a typical like time frame of how long it would take then to connect to somebody?
If you do a general request, it's like under 2 minutes. If you do a personal request, it's dependent on how long until that person gets back to you. But most people are relatively quick.
Yeah. And the general request, like you said, under 2 minutes. So there's always that option for people. They really have somebody right there, which is really quite something.
And there's groups, and there's always groups available too. So like if we have something that's called the sharing circle that's run every hour on the hour. And the way that works, it's just kind of cool. It's like a little community. So like people join, they say, the host says, hey, we're going to start. If you want to share, just put in your username and an asterisk next to your name, and that tells us you want to share. And then you share for 7 minutes. And then you've got, 8 people in the room who are like, good job, Jeff. Like, that's awesome. Fantastic. And then, we're rooting for you. We believe in you. And then the next person gets 7 minutes. And so there's forums, there's community forums for mental health issues or peer groups. So you can find people, most people are wounded healers who've been through some challenges in life, and they have healed and they're helping others. So there's no shame.
That's a great expression, wounded healers. It's so powerful, and it makes perfect sense. I'm going back to the math for a moment because I'm still conscious of my error at the beginning of our call, but the 1.8 billion, chats, and again, all of the different communications among 80 million people. And you started in 2013 because I'm in the investment business and I love math. 2013, that's 12 years ago, just getting into the 13th, 1.8 billion. That's 150 million a year. So it's really quite something, but it also underlines the huge need, right? Coming back to why you're doing this, why I'm doing what I'm doing, why, so many people are trying to just say, hey, we need to have each other's backs. And when you can help one person, it was another interesting math that I looked at not too long ago. People were speaking about, if you basically, there's 8 billion people in the world, was connecting with 2 people, and then they connected with 2. Eventually, it only takes like 36, iterations of that, and you've touched 8 billion people. So, the healed individuals are people who are getting through, being in their weakened states. Then yes, as you said, they're in a much better position to become that listener and more empathetic and have everyone around them benefiting from it, as including themselves.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Human suffering is like really, I think mental health is another way of saying like human suffering, right? It's different expressions of it, but it's basically people that are in pain. And so that's difficult, but pain teaches us a lesson, right? We all have to grow through our challenges. So it's like squaring, like we like to say, the problem is the path. This the Stoic idea. Yeah, we talked about this, that if you don't really need a grand plan in life, you just need to solve the next biggest problem in front of you. And then if you do that, you get a little nugget or you get a little key, and then you get to move on to the next level or the next challenge, and you keep doing that. So, but the process of me caring for you or caring for somebody else helps me and it helps them. Like giving is better than receiving. It's like and the way we think about it is it's like a 2-for-1 deal. Like if you want to change the world, heal yourself. Because as you heal, then you heal others, exactly as you're saying in your exponential it's it's selfish or it's wrong. And it's really not, because when your heart heals, you operate out of that healed heart to other people. And so like you have 4 kids, I have 4 kids. I know that I'm a much better dad. Like the more I heal, I'm just a better dad. And then I'm influencing
absolutely.
my kids, and then they're influencing all their friends. And so healing is important.
And are there some things that you might want to mention? I mean, without giving away any secrets, like in terms of future developments with 7 Cups, or where you think, given the needs out there and what you're excited about with, going forward.
So I think AI, I mentioned a little bit about how AI helps us now with regards to just-in-time training for listeners. I think AI will continue to add a lot of gains in the sense that being able to say like if you come on and you tell us a little bit about yourself, we can say, rather than you doing like a general request or searching for a listener by variables, we say, like, look, these are the 3 listeners that we think are going to really help you. Or here's the exercises. So more of the personalized medicine type approach, but just getting so much smarter about that than we've been.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, Glenn, and I really appreciate you being on as a guest. I wanted to give it back to you one more time as well, if there's any share with our listeners or any other comments. But it's again, hats off to you for what you've built and what you're doing, and all of the 560. I don't want to get the wrong number again, but 560 something trainers you have out there, and others. So. Yeah, that's really outstanding. But I'll pass it back to you if there's anything else you wanted to mention to our listeners.
Yeah, I really can't take all the credit for it. I mean, it's really been 7 Cups is really a community-driven effort. It's like just people that have cared for one another, and they've helped us develop the platform. So it's definitely like a massive group effort. And thanks for having me. And I love the streamlined work that you've done, and getting this metaphor down, getting this analogy down. And I'm honored to be here. So thanks for taking the time to have me on the show.
Oh, fantastic. And would you like to say thank you in 140 languages just to finish it off?
I can say no. Unfortunately, I cannot. There's not.
Okay. Okay, then that's okay. I just thought I'd throw that in there, but you've got your colleagues who are doing an amazing job that would bail you out here on that one. So
yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Glenn. All the best. Take care.